Hi, welcome back or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Laura. Hi, hello, welcome. Today we are at yet another different angle, a different setup. I'm opting to use my window as natural lighting today as opposed to my window's right in front of my desk. I was filming over there. That's where I normally film. There's a bandit in the corner who's trying to get into mischief. I wanted to do this update. I put my makeup on. My hair is washed clean finally and styled with the curly method of my hair, but we are not here to dilly-dally talk about my hair, everything like that. We are here to do an update for the Fantasy Self Palette Challenge, or as Hayleigh and I are lovingly calling it, the Torture Palette. So as that would suggest, this is a collaboration with Hayleigh. Hayleigh and I were kind of kicking around the idea of doing an eyeshadow-centric project together, some sort of collaboration, and while we were doing that, we kind of realized we have shades in our collection that are total fantasy self shades, meaning they're shades that we objectively looking at them, we like them. We think they're very pretty. However, they're shades that are very out of our comfort zone and very much not something that we normally wear on the day-to-day. They're shades that I don't reach for on the day-to-day, and I wouldn't reach for them necessarily unless they were kind of in this format. And not to say that I dislike any of these eyeshadows. I think they're great eyeshadows. Otherwise, they would have been decluttered out of my collection. So I have them here. I am happy to work on them, especially since they are shades that are definitely out of my comfort zone, and I wouldn't reach for them otherwise. So I'm going to show you a picture of what the color or the palette looked like 3 months ago. This was 3 months ago. I was so gung-ho ready for this project to start. It was very exciting. I mean, I'm still very excited about it. I'm losing some steam, and I think it's just because I have a whole lot of dark shades in this palette. I'm looking at it right now, just like the palette it was, because we do have a couple roll-ins or replacements for these, meaning I've hit pan in a couple shades. So I'm going to have my full rules down below, or Hayleigh and I's full rules down below in the description box, as well as we have the rules, and then we have a list of Hayleigh's fantasy self shadows and then a list of my fantasy self shadows, meaning when we hit pan in 2 eyeshadows, each of us picks a shade. So I would pick a shade that I like, Hayleigh would pick a shade out of my list that I'm afraid to pan, and vice versa. When Hayleigh hits 2 pans, I select one shade that she doesn't like that she has to pan, and she'll roll in a shade that she does like and does want to integrate into this palette. So the idea is eventually we will have palettes that are shades that we really are drawn to and really, really love, and not so much these fantasy self kind of shades. But this is a great exercise to try to get us out of our comfort zone and try to get us to branch out into different shades that we like. We have them in our stash, but we just don't reach for them as much as they really deserve. And Fantasy Us should come out and play a little more often, you know? Without further ado, I'm just going to show you the palette now. So hopefully you can see I have quite a few changes. So yeah, so there is quite a few changes in this. I will take a screenshot of this and then we'll do some side-by-sides. I will have before and after pictures up here talking about each shade by shade kind of thing. Kind of like I do for my Pan That palette. If you are familiar with that series, I put all of my stats over here in this section. Just, it's so much easier for me. I put quantity, weights, uses, everything like that. So the first shade we have is the shade Mullet, which is this beautiful green, I mean, it's not like a green shade. It's a beautiful green shade. And I put this in mostly because these Urban Decay heavy metal shades are shades that I keep and keep and keep, but then never reach for. So I feel like this palette as a whole was total fantasy self me, but I have reached for it quite a bit. So Mullet, I think the dip has expanded a bit, but we're still not at pan yet. And I think it's just because of my rotations of pan, those eyeshadows have not really leaned towards the green realm so much. The next shade we have is Rowdy, and that actually does have a pan in it. And I'm freaking excited about it. This, I think, is probably my least favorite shade in the entire Heavy Metals palette. It's just a shade that I don't particularly like. It's a shade that doesn't quite work the best. And it's just something I'm not really interested in. But I wore it a lot on the outer corner of my lid, blended into the rest of my looks, or with something blending it a little bit. I'm trying to wipe off. I filmed like a little Reels video for my Instagram. I'll have it linked down below if you have not seen it. I got a couple new palettes, and a liquid lipstick, and I swatched it there. But I will swatch these shades out as we kind of talk about them. So that's Mullet there and Rowdy there. So Rowdy is definitely a color that I think makes me just look sick normally, so I just don't reach for it too often. Then the next shadow here is After Party, and this was actually the first shadow that I hit pan in. It's a red eyeshadow, and the reason why I hit pan in this one so quickly is because it was like Christmas time, right after the holidays, or right during the holidays, when I started working on this palette. So I was able to do a lot of red into my looks, which was a really great beneficial thing. So I'm very thankful that I had a red in it right now to kind of focus on, and I'm very thankful that I hit pan in it. Then we have Punk Rock, which is this shade here. This shade has actually grown on me. I used to really not like it. This was tied for my least favorite shade in the palette, but it is in the Heavy Metals palette, but this shade has really grown on me, and I don't know if you can really tell, but I think this is probably going to be the next pan that I hit. It's very, very dipped in there, and with my current rotation of my Pan Those eyeshadows, I think I will be focusing on that shade a little bit more. So that is the shade... what was that? Punk Rock from the Heavy Metals palette. Then a shade that needed a lot of building up, and that's why I hit pan, I think, so quickly, was Metalhead, which is this guy here. It's one of those kind of like blue, purple, shifty kind of shades. Definitely more like purple than like the shiftiness of a blue purple. That I just love those like blue purple kind of shades. I don't know why they're so like... my eye gets drawn to them every single time, even though I used to really not like purple eyeshadows. So that is Metalhead right there. So we've hit 3 out of the 5 eyeshadows in this row alone. So I'm pretty excited about that. That was a pretty exciting thing. This took this shade took the least amount of uses to hit pan in. So I'm actually pretty surprised by that, but at the same time, not really. I had a lot of purples, I think, in my Pan Those eyeshadows at the time too, when we started rolling that or working on it. So kind of makes sense that I hit pan in it as quick as I did. I think the biggest feat though is this next shade, and this is Tickled, or I should say this was Tickled. If you saw my empties video for March, you would have seen this empty eyeshadow pan. I completely finished this up. I hated this eyeshadow so much. It was super, super flaky, just no amount of building or no amount of glitter glue. And I know this is probably a topper shade, but it just didn't work as a topper shade. I would put it on, it just wouldn't look like anything. So I ended up actually, like, full disclosure, I ended up dropping this once. Like, my whole magnetic backing of the palette came out and the eyeshadows dropped. So the shade did suffer a slight casualty. I scooped up what I thought was still eye safe, but I mean, if it landed on my desk or on the floor, we're not going to use it. The cat jumps on my desk. The cat uses the litter box. I'm just uncomfortable with that. So I did end up using this. I ended up mostly using this as like a cheek highlighter though, and it looked fine for that purpose, but I'm very happy that this is out and I can roll something else in. The next shade I have is this guy here. This is Cape Cod. This was from the Morphe and James Charles palette. This, I actually do have this. I don't know if you'll really be able to tell. I have this on the very outer portion of my eye today. And, you know, I almost am kicking myself. Like, those shades are pretty darn similar. Mullet over here and then Cape Cod. Why did I put two very similar shades in? I'm also finding that one shade that I put in here is very similar to a shade that's in my Pan That palette. So my Pan That palette is taking priority. I never reach for this shade in this palette. So, but I'm like, I don't want to take it out because then I'm going to have to like bring 2 shades in to replace it. So I'm not quite ready for that yet. However, I did use this a couple times this past quarter, not enough to make like any discernible difference. Then we have the shade Dryad, which is this guy here. This is another shade that I'm actually wearing on my eyes today. There is a slight dip. I don't know if you'll be able to see. It's kind of like I took my pinky and pushed right in the middle of it. I have a really hard time working with this shade, and it's mostly because it's like such a denim color, but then has that gold shift to it. And I just have a very hard time figuring out what kind of crease shadows to work with it. So I am wearing this shade on like the outer like half of my, like right in the center half, I guess, of my eyelid. But this is it here. So I hope you can really see it, like that denim base to like shifting gold. So it's just very challenging for me to figure out what to actually pair with it. But I think that I have that nice dip in it. I think in the next quarter I could totally hit pan in it, and we can have 2 shadows that we need to roll out and roll a couple more in, which is exciting. Then a shade that I thought I was going to use a lot, especially during winter, and just didn't, is this guy. This is the shade Smokin'. This was from the Colourpop Magic Hour. I used this one time. There is no movement in this at all. This is just a very deep, dark, like kind of graphite kind of shade. So it just looks like I drew on my hand with like a pencil, like an actual, like a sharpenable pencil kind of thing. So I have a really hard time reaching for it. It's a beautiful shade. If I'm wearing a silver, I want to wear like a bright silver, not like this deep grungy kind of silver. So I think that that's probably going to be a shade that gives me a little bit more trouble than I really was anticipating. Kind of like the next shadow that we're going to talk about. And that is this guy here. This is another one from the James Charles palette. This is the shade Boutique. The reason why I just haven't been reaching for it is because this is so similar to All Star that's in my Pan That palette, which is the Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette. This is very, very similar, like in tone, in shade, everything. It's very, very similar to it. So I'd rather finish that shadow off than reach for this and hit pan. So it kind of was like I shouldn't have put that in here. Very rookie mistake on my part, but that is the beauty. This is a brand new project that we kind of created and wanted to do, and yes, I am reaping the consequence now. Then I have this guy, which is my Kaleidoes Futurism 3, the Astro Pink palette. This was the shade Neptune, and this was probably the second pan I hit. I had a lot of blues in my pan those eyeshadows relatively recently, so this was pretty easy to hit. Plus, when I was working on the shade last year in the same palette, I focused on this because I had a fear of this shade, so I wanted to get some use out of it so I could hit pan a little bit easier. Like, I strategically started working on this last year, like in April. So that was a pretty nice shade though. That was a lot of fun. It does have a more sheer kind of base to it. So if you really want the color to look as like beautiful as this, you really do have, oh gosh, I'm gonna like drop it. You do have to build it up quite a bit, or else it is pretty sheer, and it has like that like black base to it. I don't know if you'll really be able to tell, but it's a little challenging to wear this like all over the lid because it can lend itself to be a little bit dark because of that base pigment. But overall, really, really beautiful. Very happy with that. I don't know where I'm going to swatch the rest of them. Then we have a couple other Kaleidos shades, and the first one here is Forcefield. This is from the Electro Turquoise palette. I think that's the 5th one. There is a slight dip in it. I don't know if you'll be able to really tell. Maybe there is a slight dip in it. I am wearing this as a crease shade, like very blown out as a crease shade today and on the lower lash line, but I've had this on for quite a few hours at this point, so I'm not sure how well it's going to pick up. But that is the shade here. This is Forcefield. So really beautiful shade. Just a shade that really kind of frightened me because I didn't know how to use it. So, but I'm finding ways to really enjoy it, and I really do like it so far. It's been a lot of fun to work on. Another in the same kind of realm, like an electric red shade. So there we go. You can kind of see a dip in that one forming. This has taken a back burner seat as of lately because of my Pan Those Eyeshadows project, where I have the Juvia's Place like pinky red from the Zulu palette. This is more like true intense red than, man, that is like very, very bright, isn't it? Very beautiful. It's an extremely beautiful shade. I really wore this a lot with the After Party shade, and in my intro for my Pan Those Eyeshadows was probably my favorite way that I used that shade. I had it as a halo eye on the inner and outer portions of the lid, and it was so, so beautiful. I really enjoyed that, but no pan yet, but I've used that many times. Probably the third most, it's in the top 5 of uses. I think it's like the third most used eyeshadow in this project so far. Then I have this guy here. This is Colourpop from the, what was it, Going Coconuts palette. This is Get Crackin'. This is very similar to, again, another shade in my Pan That palette, Fudge, but this just has the silver like glitter throughout. This is pretty challenging to wear because of the silver, because the silver, like normally these glitter, like in the matte shades, don't look that glittery, like you can blend the glitter away. This one is so darn glittery. Like you can tell, like you can see that. It's very, very glittery, so it's hard to actually make the glitters blend away. But I have an idea of what I want to do with this shadow to help me kind of pan 2 different items at once. So I have a look in mind that I want to try that I have not tried yet, but I'm planning on trying it with that. How many times can I say try? Along the same lines as a matte shade with glitter in it is this guy here. This is the Kaleidoes Futurism 3 Astro Pink palette. This is the shade Cosmos, a matte black with oodles of glitter in it. I barely reached for this. I really don't know how I'm going to use this shadow. Like, no clue. Like, at least the glitter in this is not as impactful. However, it's still slightly there. Very, very slightly. So I don't know how I'm going to use that one, but that is the old color story that we were working on. Fun, right? Very, very fun. So this is what the palette is looking like. Now, this is kind of the new color story that we are working on, so let me just talk to you about the new shades that we have in here. So I'm going to start with the ones that I picked myself, and then we'll talk about the ones Hayleigh picked. So the first one, this is kind of to replace Tickled, because I don't know if you counted, I had 5 shades that were finished, meaning technically at 6, that's when we roll new shades in. However, I kind of want to give myself the 3 months to work on this because my goal is to actually finish this shadow up because there is pan in it. I'm kind of sick of this living in my giant storage palette, to be quite honest. This is just a matte cream eyeshadow. I use this kind of shade when I'm blending out a lot of colorful crease work. I do not use these shades to set the lid. I literally only use them to blend out colorful shadows. If I like get carried away and bring it way too close to my eyebrow, I use this kind of shade to tone it down, not to do really anything else. I think that this is gonna just stick around for like the rest of the year because I don't need a whole lot of it, but I am really excited to just finish another eyeshadow off. So I'm slowly trying to finish eyeshadows off this year. I don't think we're going to be anywhere near like some of the people that I have been watching. Like Jessica Lee is finishing her eyeshadow champion. Maybe I should show you a swatch, right? So, I mean, it's just a matte cream shadow. So nothing super exciting, as you can see right there. Cool. The next shade I picked in, this is like borderline gimme product, borderline. I think that this shade ties in with a lot of the other colors that I have in this palette right now, so I want to roll it in and work on it while I have a lot of these other shades in here. That is this guy here. This is Luxie Beauty Lick It, Slam It, Suck It. It's just a yellow with a really intense like bluish green shift to it, which I think will pair really, really well with some of the greens that I have neglected working on in here because I feel like I don't have like a completed look for them. That is it here. Really, really pretty. I hope you can see it. Hope it focuses on not me. It's very pretty. Then a shade that I actually recruited the help of Josh, my husband, to assist me with picking a shadow. I had him look at the color story of the palette, and I was like, what do you think is missing? What do you think I could work on and use and would kind of fill any gaps in here? And he was so sweet. He picked this shadow out for me. And I'm really tickled because I bought these at the tail end of last year and I just haven't given myself permission to use them. And that sounds so silly. It sounds so stupid and silly that I'm like, I haven't given myself permission to use it. It's eyeshadow. Just use it. Use it or else it goes bad. But that is this guy here. This is JD Glow Good God. I am beyond excited to use this and get this on my eyeballs. Them as well, but oh my, like, the name does not fail. That is a gorgeous shade. It almost has a little bit of a shift, kind of like Glass Bowl, but like Glass Bowl on steroids. It is so beyond pretty. I am so beyond excited to be working on that. Like, already, that is much more like bright and fun versus like the drab, dark color story that we had going on. Then Hayleigh's 2 roll-ins. Now, I'm a little nervous, especially about, I'm very nervous about both of them for different reasons completely. So the first shade that I'm worried about is this guy. Now this is a Natasha Denona shadow in the blue purple palette. This is the shade Calypso Blue. And it's one of those blue brown, like pigmenty kind of shades. I have a very hard time with these kinds of shades because, again, they don't show the beautiful blue that I want them to show. They typically end up looking very red on my eyes and very like dark on my eyes. And I don't tend to like that. But yeah, I'm very nervous. I'm extremely nervous about that one. That is going to be a very hard one for me to pan. Extremely hard. And Natasha Denona shadows are decently deep. There's 2 grams of product in there and I am nervous. Then the next shade, I love the color of it, but I know the formula and I know how hard pressed this is, and that's what makes me the most nervous. It's this guy here, which is a beautiful, gorgeous green. The reason I put it in this project or put it in the list of options is because the formula on Luxie matte shadows is intense. It is so hard pressed. You do not need a lot of pigment to get a look to have this show up, but it's so darn pretty. And this is going to go really well with some of the other shadows that are in this. Oh yeah, like that. It's very pretty. We sent each other the shade names that we wanted to roll in a couple days ago, but when you guys are seeing this, I think we decided the shades on a week ago on Sunday, but I am beyond excited. I am so nervous. I am beyond nervous about the color selection that I have, so I can only imagine Hayleigh's. Quick put a swatch or like a whole color story of what the colors in this palette now are all together. That way you can kind of see everything swatched out all together. Please, please, please let me know color pairings that you would do. It doesn't have to be just restricted to this palette either. If you have any colors that you know that I'm already panning in my various project pan projects, or even if you say like, hey, a hot pink would look good with this, or like a shimmery orange would look cute with this, like, you can be as basic in your descriptions as possible, but just let me know because I'm always itching to find ways to use some of these shadows out, and I'm pretty nervous about some of the color pairings. I'm like looking at this again and I'm like, what have I got? Like that silver shade, well, I guess I wiped it off, but the dark silvery gray, what, and like the matte black with shimmer, what am I thinking? Like who do I think I am? Clearly fantasy me, but that is neither here nor there. Anyway, that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys are staying healthy, sane, and safe, and I will catch you in my next video. Bye!